Ever had one of those neighbors who thinks they own the whole block? Well, Mark's new neighbor wasn't just any neighbor, she was Karen, the president of the Homeowners Association, and she had her sights set on his land. Mark had just bought a beautiful 10-acre plot, a dream he'd worked his whole life for. It was his private slice of heaven, bordering a neat little suburban community. He spent his first few weeks just soaking it all in, planning where to build his house, maybe plant a garden. But his peace was shattered one sunny afternoon by a sharp, insistent voice. "Excuse me, you can't park that truck there." Mark turned to see a woman with a clipboard and an expression that could curdle milk. This was his first encounter with Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. Mark politely explained it was his property, but Karen wasn't having it. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at his truck. "This entire area is under the jurisdiction of the Meadowlands HOA, and that vehicle is an eyesore. It violates bylaw 7B. Mark was a bit taken aback. He wasn't part of any HOA. He tried to reason with her, showing her the property line on his phone's map. "See, my land is separate. I'm not in your community." Karen just laughed, a short, condescending sound. "Oh, honey, that's what they all say. You're new here, so I'll let it slide with a warning. Read the welcome packet. You'll find all the rules you need to follow." With that, she spun on her heel and marched off, leaving Mark completely baffled. There was no welcome packet because he wasn't part of her association. He shrugged it off, thinking it was just a strange misunderstanding. Oh, how wrong he was. The next day, a certified letter arrived. It was from the HOA, listing a dozen infractions: his unapproved fence, the improperly stored building materials, even the color of the shed he was planning to repaint. Each violation came with a hefty fine. Mark was furious. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore, it was harassment. He decided to do some digging. He spent the next week at the county records office, pulling up every deed, survey, and plat map related to his land and the surrounding Meadowlands community. He wanted to be armed with undeniable proof. The clerks got to know him by name as he meticulously traced the history of the properties back decades, and that's when he found it, a dusty old survey from the 1950s that made his heart pound. It wasn't just a simple property line, it was a bombshell. Meanwhile, Karen was escalating her campaign. She'd drive by slowly, taking pictures. She'd leave nasty notes on his gate. She even started telling other residents that he was a problem who was lowering their property values. Mark ignored her, focusing on his research. He knew a confrontation was coming, and he wanted to be ready. The tipping point came a week later. Mark was out clearing some brush when two police cars pulled up, lights flashing. Karen was standing right behind them, a smug look of triumph on her face. She'd finally done it. She'd called the cops on him for trespassing. "Sir, we've received a complaint that you are illegally developing on HOA property," one of the officers said, approaching him cautiously. Karen chimed in from behind. "He's been warned repeatedly, officer. He refuses to follow our community rules. This land belongs to the association." Mark stayed calm. He looked at the officers, then at Karen. "Officers, I can assure you this is my property. In fact, I have the legal documents right here to prove it." He walked over to his truck and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were the deeds, the surveys, and the star of the show, that old faded map from the 1950s. He laid it all out on the hood of his truck. "This is the original deed to my 10 acres, he explained, pointing to the clearly marked boundaries. "And this is the plat map for the Meadowlands HOA filed 20 years later." The officers looked at the documents, then back at Karen, who was starting to look a little less certain. "That's impossible," she sputtered. "The community center, our park, it's all part of Meadowlands." "Ah, the community center," Mark said with a slow smile. "That's the most interesting part. You see, according to this legally filed survey from 1957, which predates your entire development, your community center, the one with the lovely swimming pool and tennis courts, it's not on HOA land." He paused for dramatic effect, letting his words hang in the air. "It's on mine." A stunned silence fell over the group. The officers stared at the map, their eyes wide. Karen's face went from smug to pale to beet red in about 5 seconds. She snatched the map, her hands trembling. This is a fake. You forged this." "It's a certified copy from the county records office, ma'am," one officer said quietly, his tone shifting from authoritative to slightly awestruck. "It's a legally binding document." Mark continued, his voice steady. "For years, your HOA has been using 2 full acres of my property. You built your entire community hub on land you never owned. So, while we're talking about rules and bylaws, let's talk about the decades of unpaid property taxes and rent you owe me. Or we could just talk about trespassing." Karen was speechless. Her entire world, her little kingdom built on rules and regulations, was crumbling around her. She had tried to bully the one man who had the power to take it all away. The police officers, realizing this was a civil matter far beyond a simple trespassing call, politely excused themselves, advising both parties to consult their lawyers. As the police cars drove away, Karen was left standing there, clutching the map like it was a venomous snake. The smugness was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated panic. Mark just packed up his documents and went back to his work, the sound of his chainsaw the only noise breaking the quiet. The aftermath was swift and brutal for the HOA. Mark's lawyer sent a letter that was the legal equivalent of a tactical nuke. The HOA board convened an emergency meeting, and the news spread like wildfire through the community. Their residents were furious, not at Mark, but at Karen and the board for their catastrophic incompetence. How could they not know the land their community center was on wasn't theirs? The HOA had no choice. They could either face a lawsuit that would bankrupt them, with Mark demanding back rent for decades of use and forcing them to tear down their beloved center, or they could negotiate. They chose to negotiate. Karen was immediately and unceremoniously removed as president. Her reign of terror was over. The new board was much more humble when they approached Mark. They offered a public apology and asked what it would take to make things right. Mark, being a reasonable guy, didn't want to destroy a community. He made them a very generous offer. He would sell them the 2 acres their community center sat on, but at its current, and very high, market value. He also demanded that the HOA legally and publicly acknowledge his property as independence and put a permanent end to all harassment. They eagerly accepted, the sale went through, and Mark ended up with a very, very significant payday, more than enough to build his dream house and then some. He finally had his peace and quiet, and the respect of the entire neighborhood. He became something of a local legend, the guy who single-handedly took on a tyrannical HOA and won by simply knowing his rights and doing his homework. And Karen, no one saw her for a while. Rumor has it she sold her house and moved away, probably to find some other unsuspecting community to rule over. But in Meadowlands, her name became a cautionary tale, a reminder that you should always be sure you know who owns the ground you're standing on before you start making demands. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this one.